Hey guys, today I want to talk with you about The American Roommate Experiment, a romance novel by Elena Armas that was published in 2022. As per usual, we will start this review with a short synopsis, then proceed to the non-spoiler review and wrap this video up with the spoilers. If you haven't read The American Roommate Experiment yet, then do not worry. I will make sure to let you know when the spoilers begin. So in this novel we get to follow Rosie and Lucas. Rosie is a brand new romance writer. Rather recently she found this passion for writing, and after successfully publishing a book, she has decided to quit her stable and well-paid job and dedicate herself to full-time writing. However, things are not going as great as she had hoped. She feels stuck, and no matter how much she tries, the creative juices just refuse to flow. If that wasn't enough, due to external circumstances, Rosie's being forced to temporarily move out of her place and crash in her best friend's studio apartment. Then we have Lucas, a cousin of that best friend whose apartment Rosie's crashing in. And as so it happens, that apartment has already been promised to him, making this whole situation a little bit complicated. Trying to find a way out of this predicament, Rosie and Lucas decide to share the tiny studio apartment for the time being, as well as go on a series of romantic experimental dates to bring back the inspiration into Rose's writing. A last thing worth mentioning is that Rosie has had the biggest crush on Lucas for basically forever. So what could go wrong? Last year, I picked up the Spanish Love Deception to read, and just like the rest of the world, I spent the whole time swooning over the grumpy yet adorably devoted Aaron. That's why the day the American Roommate Experiment showed up in the bookstores, I knew I had to give it a try. Now, I'm not saying that the Spanish Love Deception was a masterpiece, but it was fun, lighthearted, and thoroughly entertaining. All things I expect from a rom-com type of novel. Now, before we start talking about the American Roommate Experiment, I want to take a few seconds to point out that even though places like Goodreads insist on this book being a sequel to Spanish Love Deception, it's really not. This is a standalone novel. The only difference between you reading this right away or reading this after the Spanish Love Deception is that if you are familiar with the Love Deception, then in the Roommate Experiment you will get to enjoy a little cameo of Catalina and Aaron. Besides Selena and Rosie being best friends, however, there is no real connection between the books, and you won't miss anything if you decide to read just one of them. I honestly can't even remember Rosie being in Spanish Love Deception. Anyhow, that being said, let's bring back our full attention to the American Roommate Experiment. Look, I wanted to love this book, and I can't even say that I didn't like it. Truth be told, when I sat down to write a review for it, I still wasn't completely sure if this will turn out to be a wine or a tea review. Yet the more time I spent trying to put all of my thoughts into words, the better I realized that this novel was just so very average. It does tick all of the boxes needed for it to be a good romance novel, but at the same time it kinda gave me the impression that the author was just going through the motions, like actually ticking those boxes without much heart behind it. When it comes to our main characters, my very first impression of Luca was incredibly positive. He won me over before even he properly showed up in the story. In my humble opinion, Elena Armas is much better at writing male main characters than female. I found Lucas to be charming, interesting, caring, and funny. I found Lucas to be the type of a man one would want to bring home to their parents. He's basically flawless, definitely written by a woman type of a male protagonist. Yet Rosie, while generally speaking a positive character as well, also felt rather cringy. For so much of the book, I just couldn't shake this second-hand embarrassment. The way she spoke and the way she behaved arguably might be very realistic for a young girl with a massive crush, but if you are like me and you're a fan of a confident female lead, Rosie might not be exactly your cup of tea. Now, when it comes to their relationship, author has described this book as a slow burn romance, but to me, honestly, it didn't feel like slow burn, it just felt kind of weird. Quite quickly in the story, one can notice that Rosie is crushing on Lucas and vice versa, yet even with that knowledge and even with nothing really stopping them from exploring this attraction, for the longest time to me these two didn't feel nor like friends nor like romantic partners. making this whole dynamic weird and messy. Lastly, I have a bone to pick with just how weirdly paced and cliche-ridden the story was. We get this slow burn kind of friends to lovers story, while at the same time we get the forced proximity trope and fake dating trope. In a way, it felt like the author is trying to squeeze everything that's currently popular in one story, and that combination just didn't really work for me. All that being said, the novel had its moments. On more than one occasion, Lucas and Rosie were super sweet together and supportive of each other. They shared a pretty intense chemistry, and despite all of the shortcomings, they do work well as a couple. So if you are like me and you grabbed this book just because you enjoyed Spanish Love Deception, then do yourself a favor and keep your expectations in check. And if you grabbed it because you are a sucker for rom-com type of novels, then go ahead. At the very least, you'll get to swoon over Lucas. All in all, I believe that now is as good a time as ever to move to the spoilers, so if you haven't read The American Roommate Experiment yet, now it's a great time for you to click off this video. So let's start the spoiler review by talking a little bit more about Rosie and this whole dating experiment. First of all, is it just me or her crush on Lucas felt just a little bit creepy at times? Like, I understand the temptation she had to do some light Instagram stalking when she thought that she will be meeting him at the wedding, but this whole ordeal of her looking up his account constantly, as in daily, and going as far as saving his photos into her phone so she could look at them and daydream, felt a little icky. Definitely not nearly as romantic as Elena Armas wanted it to be. Now, when it comes to this whole dating experiment these two came up with in order to help Rosie to get over this writer's block, for the longest time I wasn't sure how going on a bunch of fake dates was supposed to help. I do get that it's a book logic, not logic that we are supposed to follow, and that these experimental dates were needed so we as the readers would have some romance action without the leads having to actually acknowledge that they are interested in one another, but still, how are these dates supposed to help? If I want to be romantically inspired, the last thing I imagine doing is going to one of my friends and asking him to pretend to like me and go out with me. I can only imagine that instead of relaxing and enjoying myself on said dates, I would just keep on thinking that this person is simply pretending, that none of this is real. Once again, it's not romantic, it's awkward. If anything, I liked Catalina's idea much better. If Rosie wanted to experience real emotions, meeting actual strangers seemed like a smarter way to go. Overall, when I finished the book, I sat down to write this review and started to really think about what I have just read, and I realized three things. 1. This book has multiple plot lines that kinda go nowhere. Just to give you a few examples. Rosie is afraid to tell her family, especially her father, that she has quit her well-paid job because she's worried that he will be disappointed in her. Then she manages to finish her second book, tells her father the truth, he is obviously supportive, and the whole conflict is wrapped up in about half a page, which makes me believe that this whole situation was created in the first place just so that Rosie would have an excuse to crash at Lena's apartment instead of going home to her father. Lucas is dealing with a similar problem too. He got injured and is not able to serve professionally anymore, yet he has not shared this bit of information with anyone in his family. And then he does share it and he starts getting his life together again and builds his confidence level up. All of it, however, he does off-screen, so to say. If we are not going to get some heartfelt moments of him sharing his fears and worries with his family, or at least Lena, then why does it matter so much in the first place that he has not told his family the truth about what's going on? Another one of the weird plot lines is this whole idea where Lena seems to disapprove of Lucas and Rose's possible relationship because Rosie deserves the world. A conflict used in this book to make Lucas feel like he's definitely not good enough for Rosie, and which is also solved in one conversation between Rosie and Lena where Rosie points out that she's actually in love with a guy. Now, this felt like the author wanted to turn Lena into an obstacle that prevents the lovebirds from being together, yet at the same time Armas didn't want to actually commit and ruin the opinion people might have already had of Lena. And lastly, we have Rosie's brother. Now, I honestly don't know why we got that storyline in this novel at all. My guess is just so Lucas could be the manly man protector, and consequently so that our main leads would be forced to share a bed for a night. That's about it. For half of the book, we just keep on hearing how worried Rosie is that her brother is not communicating with her, that he have gotten himself into some kind of trouble, just for us to learn in a very rapid succession that he's working as a stripper in order to help a girl he likes, and that his boss is a scary man and he wants out. Gotta say that the author didn't particularly bothered with the details when giving us this explanation. And then after we just learn what's going on, we ship him back to his dad because we can't actually have him staying with Rosie and acting as a cogblock. 2. This book is filled with cliches. I have mentioned this shortly in my non-spoiler review, but besides this book trying to mash multiple tropes associated with romance novels, we also get multiple scenes that can be found in so many romance novels or rom-coms that personally I am getting really tired of them. The masquerade ball, the running to the airport to profess your love, or the countdown to midnight on New Year's Eve. Maybe it's just me being inherently unromantic, but them cooking together or watching stupid TV shows felt much more intimate and much sweeter than basically any of the grand gestures described in the book. Also, the I'm so unlucky and love literally every man I dated before I met you was a complete and utter disappointment. I'm not a fan of that either. If you can't say anything good about any of the relationships you have previously been in, I tend to believe that the common denominator of those shitty relationships is you. Sorry. 3. The conflict of why these two can't be together is so weak that it could have been solved in one honest conversation. Now, truth be told, I love when a romance novel presents me with a strong conflict that pushes our main leads apart. I live for that yearning. The stronger the conflict, the more rewarding the end result will be. And when you look at it simply, without thinking too much about it, the conflict in this book is pretty decent. Lucas has just been through a very traumatic event, which shook him to his core, completely changed his plans for the future, and consequently, he can't imagine being with anyone romantically before he manages to find himself again. And yet, we don't really see this broken man in this book. Sure, he's lonely, he experiences pretty awful leg pains, and he has nightmares once in a while, but for most of the book, author paints a picture of a man who's basically perfect. He's friendly and understanding. The very first day, he doesn't want Rosie to feel uncomfortable, so he leaves the apartment to her, even though that means that he will have to sleep in a diner. He's kind. He helps their neighbor who is suffering from dementia. He befriends her and continues to visit her just because he knows that it makes her happy. He's selfless, caring, and attentive. He puts Rosie's needs above his own. He always makes sure that she has eaten, that she didn't forget to drink enough water, and every night he makes sure to ask Rosie how much writing she managed to do. He's thoughtful. He memorizes the notes Rosie prepared for him, describing what is a goal of each date, and plans something interesting and original to do on all of them. And to add to that, he's hot as fuck and cooks as good as any Michelin star chef. Now, I know that seemingly perfect people can have self-esteem issues too, but the more I read about him, the more I struggled to believe it. The fact that the author herself remembered that he feels like he has nothing to offer only when she needed to put a hiccup in their growing relationship didn't help either. To add to that, if Lucas would have just told Rosie, hey, look, I like you, you're awesome, but my life is currently a mess and I want to fix it so I could feel like I bring something to the table in this relationship before I commit to it, instead of just making her believe that he doesn't care for her, the book could have been at least twice as short. Anyhow, I guess I have been nothing but critical about this novel in the spoiler review, but once again let me point out that overall I found The American Roommate Experiment to be rather enjoyable. I can easily name 20 other romance novels that I have read this year that are way worse than this one. So let's wrap up this review by talking about two of my favorite scenes of the novel. And let's start with my favorite moment of Rosie and Lucas as a couple. The fourth date, the recreation of Catalina's and Aaron's wedding. This scene was flawless. Yes, it was cheesy and over-the-top romantic, but at the same time it was tailored so perfectly to fit the two of them. I loved to see them playing with this idea of what could have happened to them if they would have actually met when they were originally supposed to meet. For me, this was the very first moment in the novel where they both were actually honest with each other. And the second scene that I loved so very much in the novel was when Rosie showed up at the airport and told Lucas how she really feels and proposed this idea to travel back to Spain with him, and he said no. This was the type of irrational decision making I was not expecting from a novel like The American Roommate Experiment. But the fact that Lucas refused to let Rosie to just uproot her life and follow him when he himself doesn't have a clear direction on what he wants to do going forwards was just great. Of course, he could have explained to her why he said no, but I did appreciate him saying no in the first place. All in all, I can't say that this was a bad book. It had its fair share of moments. It was filled with romance. It featured a swoon-worthy main lead, and overall it worked very well as a quick read for a relaxing day. I just expected something more. But that's just my opinion. What about yours?